Hello, everybody. Scott Golden with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel, and we continue our TNT Tuesday Night Titans review series, this time with the 28th of August, 1984. And we're fastly approaching, I think there's about 8 or 9 more 1984, and then we move into 1985 where the shows are about half as long. So that's an update there. But we move into this program. Steve Gray versus Iron Mike Sharp opens our program. As you can imagine, Iron Mike Sharp, a perennial enhancement talent carpenter for the World Wrestling Federation well into the mid-90s. But here, he's still seen as a relative star, believe it or not, for those that don't have a long-term history knowledge. Sharp does have at least a few matches around the, I believe, Spectrum and Madison Square Garden with Bob Backlund, the predecessor to Hulk Hogan as main babyface champion for the organization back into the 70s. Iron Mike Sharp did have a manager in Lou Albano at one point. Sharp, who is most notable for a couple of things, opening a wrestling school in the New Jersey area at a later point, and breaking in a lot of people, including but not limited to Mike Bucci, a.k.a. Nova from ECW fame, and others, also known as being a guy who's obsessed with cleanliness to the point of having an OCD nature with it, showering so long one night that he actually was locked in the building. In this scenario, though, Sharp using the arm brace armband, and it's raised in interviews with Vince. Is there anything in the band? And Sharp protests taking it off loudly. One thing about Mike Sharp is he's never quiet, either in the ring making a lot of guttural noises or in promos yelling and screaming and the like. Sharp in a relatively easy squash match with Steve Gray to open the program, and then we see him yelling about his physique, yelling about wanting opportunities, yelling about being injured and not being taken seriously and the like. We move on to Amy McMullen opening up about WWF Magazine at the time. She does a segment, or an article rather, on Paul Orndorff, making fun of Orndorff's manhood, among other things. Interesting to have a writer from the magazine on the program. Maybe they're trying to get the magazine taken more seriously at the time. Maybe they were trying to get some heat off them for being what some people consider to be a sexist company at the time, but the segment really doesn't seem to fit. She's awkward as all get out. If you enjoy awkward people on television, if this is something that makes you happy to watch, go out of your way to watch this. She can barely look at the camera. She's stammering, stuttering, and very nervous the whole segment. Admits to liking Jesse Ventura as another article piece later in the segment. But, good gosh, she is just really, really awkward. Tony Garea versus Ken Patera up next. Of course, Patera, as mentioned earlier, a former Intercontinental Champion, has a very decisive victory over Garea, who's a multi-time former Tag Team Champion at the time. The full Nelson swing is employed here, various other maneuvers, and Patera walks away as the victor in this 1984 contest. Really not much to see here in terms of if you're looking for a quality wrestling match. This isn't it. Then we see several segments, including a match with Big John Studd. He is obsessed with being a walking giant. Says that he is bigger and more influential than Andre, who he later calls Andrea in a later segment in the same program. Says he's 6'10" and over 400 pounds. Says he can bench press 700 pounds, I think is the claim. I think it actually rose during the promo, if I'm remembering correctly, because it was like 6 something and then 7 something and then 701. But says he's not going to do it here. He'll do it in 3 weeks. Studd is, for a giant, he's so minor-manneredly spoken. I believe it's the next episode after this that Bobby Heenan debuts as his manager, which is taking us into either September or October '84. I think it was September '84. Um, but at the time, Stud, you can clearly see he needs a manager because he's just like mild mannered and kind of. I mean, he starts to get upset, but it's not really raised voices. You see him toss around the enhancement talent they put in front of him, using power moves and bear hugs and the like, and really, having found obviously a place to be, but at the same time needing that little extra push. The pairing with Heenan that carries him through WrestleMania 2 is a big deal. Then we move into George Scott, reflects on his wrestling career, talks about starting wrestling pro at 18, amateur at 14, talks about traveling the world with his brother, which at this point he and his brother were not speaking in real life over some differences in business philosophy. Suffice to say, Scott, a lot of people didn't realize this, but was the booker of the day in time for WrestleMania 1. May have even been booker here because it seems like it's really odd. Uh, it's really odd to see him, who has no wrestling history in the area whatsoever, on the program, but maybe given the nod as booker, whatever have you. We then see Cowboy Bob Orton up. He's welcome to the show, obviously dressed as a cowboy, leather and all, cowboy hat included. He says he's brought his horse with him. Forget the name of the horse. I want to say, I don't even remember, but there was a name given to the horse. But the horse is a beautiful Appaloosa. We see Orton versus Pat Patterson in a really good match. Orton makes everything look phenomenal. It sells like an amazing, just an amazingly competent heel for Pat Patterson here in this matchup. But certainly worth checking out if you like Randy Orton. You'll see where he gets it from his father. If you don't like Randy Orton, you can see that his father's methodical style is something he picked up. If you have never seen Ace Cowboy Bob Orton before, worth going out of your way to see this, and certainly uh, Pat Patterson is good fodder for him. We go back to the studio and continue the interview. We hear Orton talk about wanting more matches with Tito Santana as he took Santana all the way through. We then see the segment with the horse. His horse Indigo is what's here as I'm looking at notes. I didn't know I'd written that down. But anyway, so here's a bit more crazy humor. A couple of things. Number one, this horse is huge, and I don't know why they brought it into the building rather than taking cameras outside. But anyhow, so the horse is relatively mild mannered, just kind of standing there like, what the heck are you people doing? And Alfred Hayes, who is a good sport in all of these segments, and probably one of my favorite parts of TNT in general, is Alfred Hayes. Alfred Hayes finally is coerced to get on the horse, but not before Cowboy Bob puts the saddle on the horse, and does so by stepping up and going around the horse's neck and reaching around the horse's neck, not putting the saddle there, but putting it on in a very odd manner. And then we see Al Hayes getting on the horse and completely just being rocked and bucked about. And matter of fact, Vince actually asks Orton at one point, "Do you know how to make your horse buck?" And delayed reaction, Hayes has a reaction about 20 seconds later. "Oh, no, certainly, sure, don't do that." In any event, this is a funny segment if you like to see Al Hayes get made fun of, or if you're just into crazy, zany kind of stuff. Then we go to a Brie Brian Blair versus Jerry Valiant match. Typical Blair. Blair really good on the mat. I don't understand quite why he was so featured at this point, especially when, a couple of years down the road, he's dropped down the card quite a bit as one of the killer bees with Jim Brunzell. But it seems like we see a lot of B. Brian Blair here. I think more than anything, it was just a sign that to people leaving their respective territories. Remember, the expansion starts in 83, and the raid is 84, 85, really, maybe 86 even, but 84 through 86. But Blair's one of the first to jump to the WWF, and maybe there was a message they were trying to send about the possibility of, like, hey, if you jump, you're going to be treated well. Because we do see a lot of Brian Blair during these early TNT segments, more so than his average. Then we go to Salvatore Bellomo, and I mean, this is just an awkward segment because he's speaking so lowly that the off-camera producer asks him to speak more forcefully, and the and Vince even brings it to his attention. He basically says he's a humble, shy guy. His accent is less thick here than it is at other times, which I found interesting too. Kind of makes me wonder how much of a put on the accent is. Then he cooks an authentic Italian meal, including some pasta, some chicken cacciatore, a couple other dishes, 2 or 3 dishes, but just interesting there. He serves up the cooked meal as we close the program. So for this one, I mean, worth going out of your way to see the B. Brian Blair match just for the purposes of fun. Worth going out of your way to see the Bob Orton match because, number one, footage of Pat Patterson in longer matches is somewhat rare. And secondly, if you want just comedy, worth going out of your way to see the horse segment with Al Hayes and Bob Orton and Vince McMahon. So definitely worth doing there. I'm going to catch up and get some other work done, but we will have more of these up over the next few days. If you like what you hear, no pun intended, please feel free to comment below, like, and mention any series you'd like us to begin. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.